And let's turn then to COVID, because COVID actually leaped out to us. It became really interesting. The mainstream media, who we shared our focus group with, they actually picked up on this immediately. Was a lot of the fears around return of COVID restrictions and of impact on the election, mail-in balloting, and all of that. Let's take a listen to that, and we're going to talk about it afterwards.
The candidates have said, can Donald Trump beat Joe Biden?
Problem is the fair election. So here we go again. We're starting the cranking up with the COVID, supposedly with the masking, and it's the same play they did 4 years ago. They're going to play the mail-in ballots, and the cheating's going to take place, and it's going to be the same scenario again.
Like, I work in the schools, and a couple of the teachers were like, already COVID's coming in, the masks. Some of the schools are already going online. Some of the colleges are getting shut down. Like, it's like a deja vu. And then you think about it, okay, so then the mail-in ballot's got to come. Like, do I think he can beat him? Absolutely, if it's fair.
So you think that COVID stuff you think is linked to the election?
Yes, absolutely.
And who's doing that? Who's orchestrating that? Go on, Jim.
The Democratic Party. It was an article written by, I forget what the news magazine was, but it was a liberal news magazine, and they came out and basically said it was planned to have the election go the way it was. And a lot of Republicans went along with that plan because they wanted to keep the swamp, they wanted to keep the dirty politics, and some of the Republicans are involved with that. And it was a planned event, and they used COVID as a way to push it in.
With the pandemic, we see it coming again, and there's a lot of writing on the wall. I think there's a lot of money exchanged. There's big pharmas behind it all. As far as can Trump beat Biden, I think I could probably beat Biden at this point. The guy's stumbling around, forgets where he is, can't remember his words, doesn't know what he's talking about. And so I wonder, like, really who's running? We put the name Biden on it, but who's really holding those puppet strings? And can Trump win over those?
Put your hands up if you think the 2020 election was rigged. I'm repeating what some of you guys have said back to me here. This idea that COVID is coming back up again. Put your hands up if you think that's a deliberate plan to try and basically stitch the next election up for the Democrats.
It's all about fear. And that's what it is. It's all about fear. Scare everybody. Stay indoors, wear your mask. COVID's coming back. I'm here to help. It's fear.
It's control to divide people.
Well, if you think that's the case, I'll ask the question again. At least four of you nodding there. Don't know about the exact semantics, but repeating back what you said to me. Put your hands up if you do think that there's at least some connection between COVID coming back and the next election being rigged for the Democrats.
So clearly, it's not only about return of COVID restrictions. I've seen this too, in terms of people, like talking about stories. There's one college bringing back mask mandates. They're like, oh, well, that's going to justify, this. I know Alex Jones and others have been talking about it. So clearly, that is going through, to a lot of the voters. But then you also saw the divide in terms of somebody like James, the person in our focus group, who didn't raise his hand whenever he said the election was stolen. He was the only one who departed in the previous clip. He's like, why would that be good for President Biden? But the divide there seemed one of the starker ones, and one of the things that really jumped out that we didn't expect to see.
Absolutely, and it's correlating with that sort of pro-Trump on the one hand, concerns about 2020 election, and these couple of people in the group who are resistant to those kind of things. But that was the majority view in that group, that COVID is linked to the next election basically going the same way in their eyes as the previous one, which they view as being rigged for Joe Biden. Now, this says to me that, if we fast forward to an election where Trump and Biden are the candidates, which obviously is not guaranteed, but let's assume that is the case, and we get a Biden win in that election, that is going to cause a lot of rancor and a big pool of distrust amongst these voters.
They're already been set up for it.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've seen these, I've just noticed this in the past few weeks. There were a couple little stories. There's like an elementary school near here that did masks for 10 days or something. And these stories have been blowing up huge in right-wing media. And, it's partly what those media outlets are choosing to cover, and it's also partly what these voters are primed to really
I think it's
believe.
What they're concerned about.
And so they, when they see that story, it fits into their mental pattern of, oh, this is what happened last time, is what's going to happen again. I thought not only in terms of, we saw what happened last time. A majority of Republicans thought the election was rigged. It was catastrophe on January 6th, and it was, a genuine sort of threat to the core of democracy here. But if you have that happen again, obviously that's a scary scenario. The other thing that I thought about, though, is doesn't this end up being sort of self-defeating for Trump? If your voters think it's going to be rigged anyway, does it make it harder to motivate them to the polls? And we saw a little bit of this in the Georgia Senate races that happened, came right on the heels of 2020. And you had some influencers, and I think the president's son, Don Jr., going down to Georgia and basically saying, like, it was rigged, it was stolen. And there was a lot of analysis at the time that this really demotivated people, because what's the point of, upending your day and doing some of the hurdles that it takes to show up at the polls if you don't think your vote is going to count anyway? So to me, it's sort of a double-edged sword for them that they already have this idea baked in that the election is going to be rigged and their votes are going to be stolen.
Absolutely, and particularly when you think the Republicans do skew older, and older people tend to use mail-in ballots more. So that is obviously a factor as well. What I would say is that local Republican parties, state parties, have been changing their message on mail-in ballots over the last year, since the midterms at least, saying, actually sign up, we need to do this, we need to play the Democrats at their own game. We expect that to have an impact. But what these focus groups tell us is they tell us not just what people are thinking in terms of their vote, but whether they might vote. And this turnout question is going to be absolutely crucial at the 2024 election, because which side can get its people out is critical to the result. And we're going to see that with the election integrity argument, but we're also going to see it on abortion and reproductive rights. Democrats will be hoping to put abortion plebiscites on the ballot in various states to try and boost their turnout overall. So these focus groups also give us an insight into that. What's driving them? Are they actually going to turn out? What's their enthusiasm like?
Very true.
Yeah, and to turn now to more of what these individuals thought about some of the other candidates, I mentioned before, I was surprised how much the pandemic came up in the context both of, the election being rigged again, and also in the context of some of the critique of Trump. And, this is one of the things that Ron DeSantis had been leaning into. I actually haven't been hearing him making this case as much, but this raises for me perhaps he was onto something with that original critique and contrast that he was making with Donald Trump. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.